The gate light was the kind of orange that makes everyone look tired. I stood in the walk-up lane in a gray Army physical training shirt and running shorts, no name on me anywhere, and I waited my turn behind a soldier signing in a contractor. The corporal at the terminal did not look at me when it was my turn. He looked at the line of cars behind me. He was young, 22, maybe. His patrol cap sat a little high. He had the bored, buzzing energy of a man 3 hours into a 6-hour shift. "ID?" he said. I had my card in my hand. I did not give it to him yet. I wanted to see the gate, and you see a gate best when nobody knows you're watching. He sighed. He tipped his head toward the far side of the lot, where a sign pointed visitors toward the pass office. "They only let you in to fill a quota, sweetheart," he said. He said it to the private beside him, not to me, but he said it loud enough for the cars, loud enough for the whole idling line. "Visitor lane's that way." The private beside him did not laugh. That was the first thing I noticed. She looked at him, and then she looked at me, and something in her face went careful. I had been called worse than that, at that same kind of gate, a long way from where we were standing. I had been 19 the first time. The words were different. The meaning was the same. You are here because a slot needed filling. Do not mistake that for belonging. I handed him my card and said nothing. He took it without looking. He pressed it flat against the reader on the terminal, the way you handle a thing you have handled 10,000 times. He was already turning back toward the private, already halfway into whatever he had been saying before I interrupted his evening by existing. The reader held the card a half-second longer than it should have. I watched the screen light change on his face. It went from the pale blue of a normal read to something with more white in it. A field opened that he did not expect. He frowned at it. He tapped it. He looked at the card in his hand, then at me, then back at the screen, and the color started to leave his face the way water leaves a sink, slow at first and then all at once. He did not know it yet, but the ground had already moved. I let it hold there. I let the corporal stare at a screen he did not understand, and I stood in my running shorts in the orange light, and I thought about how I had ended up walking my own front gate on foot on the last night before it became mine. I have watched a lot of faces do what his was doing, read a thing they cannot square with the picture in their head. It is always the same sequence. First, the frown, then a second look at the object, the card, the badge, the screen, as if the object has betrayed them, then the look back up at the person, longer, measuring, then the drop. The color goes and the certainty goes with it. Corporal Brandt went through all 4 steps in about 3 seconds. I counted, more or less, out of an old habit. You learn at a gate to count things. Seconds. Cars. The gap between when a person should react and when they do. The gap tells you almost everything. His gap had just gotten very long. I had checked into lodging that afternoon. A single room on the 2nd floor, government carpet, a window that looked out on a parking lot, and a stand of pines. I had unpacked 1 bag. I had set my rank on the dresser. 2 subdued oak leaves, the collar insignia of a lieutenant colonel, sitting on a scarred laminate top next to a room key and a folder of in-processing paperwork. I had left them there on purpose. In the morning, I would put them on and stand up in front of a formation and take responsibility for the military police on this installation. Every guard, every patrol, every gate, I would become the provost marshal, which is a long way of saying I would become the person accountable for who is safe here and who is kept out. It is the job I had spent 24 years walking toward, one small proof at a time. But that was the morning. That evening, I did not want to be a lieutenant colonel. I wanted to be nobody. You learn more about a guard force in 10 minutes of being nobody than you learn in 10 inspections. When the commander comes to a gate, the gate performs. The guards stand straight. The greetings are crisp. The lane runs like a training video. None of it is a lie exactly. It is just not the truth. The truth of a gate is how it treats the person who cannot do anything for it or to it. The tired spouse, the lost contractor, the woman in running shorts who is nobody at all. So I laced my running shoes. I left the oak leaves on the dresser. I put my card in the little zip pocket of my shorts because you cannot get onto a military installation without it, even if you own the installation. And I walked out into the evening to meet my gate as a stranger. It was a good walk, long enough to think. The base was doing its early evening things. Sprinklers on the parade field, a formation of trainees jogging in step somewhere I could hear but not see, their cadence rolling flat across the grass. The smell of cut lawn and diesel, and under it, the mineral smell of a hot day cooling off. Every installation smells a little different and they all smell the same. That is a thing you cannot explain to someone who has not spent a life on them. The particulars change, the bones do not. Fuel and mown grass and hot asphalt and floor wax. The sound of a flag halyard tapping a pole in the wind. The specific quiet of a place that runs on a schedule even when no one is looking. I have been stationed in a dozen of these places, and I could have found my way to any gate on any of them blindfolded. By feel, by smell, by the pull of the traffic. I passed the commissary and the chapette, and the little chapel with its white steeple going gray in the dusk. I passed a playground, empty, the swings still. I passed a row of quarters with the windows lit and the blue flicker of televisions inside, families doing the ordinary evening things that the gate exists to protect. That is the part civilians never quite understand about a checkpoint. It is not there to be difficult. It is there so that the people behind it can leave their doors unlocked and their children on the swings and never once think about the man in the vehicle who wanted to hurt them, because a soldier at a gate thought about him for them. I had thought about that man for a lot of people, for a lot of years. I was about to be responsible for a whole force of people whose entire job was to keep thinking about him. I wanted to know who they were when they thought no one was counting. I read the gate before I reached it, the way I read every gate, which is a habit I cannot turn off, and stopped trying to years ago. The lane light on the near side was burned out. That was the first thing. Half the walk-up lane sat in shadow. A door on the guard shack was propped open with a folding chair, which meant the badge-controlled door was not controlling anything. Small things. The kind of small things that are nothing. Right up until the morning, they are everything. There was a traffic cone lying on its side in the median that nobody had picked up. There was a barrier arm that came down a beat slower than it should have, a hydraulic warning service. There was a guard on the vehicle lane who checked the first 3 cars carefully and then, when the line built up behind them, started waving cars through, with a glance instead of a look, because he was human, and the line was long, and the pressure to move traffic is real and constant, and it is exactly the pressure a smart enemy counts on. None of it was a scandal. Every gate in the Army has a burned-out light and a slow barrier and a guard who speeds up when the line gets long. I was not there to write anyone up. I was there to take the temperature. And the temperature I was taking said this was a gate that had gotten comfortable. Not lazy, exactly. Comfortable. A gate that had gone a long time without anything happening and had started quietly without anyone deciding to believe that nothing ever would. I know that gate. I have worked that gate. Comfortable is how a gate feels right up until the afternoon it is not. And the young ones. You can tell a lot from how the young ones stand. These 2 stood like the shift was something happening to them rather than something they were doing. The corporal leaned. The private did not quite, but she was learning to. I got in the walk-up line behind the contractor and I waited my turn and I watched and I was nobody. Then it was my turn and the corporal did not look at me and he told the cars I was a quota and I handed him my card and said nothing. I had come to learn the gate. The gate was about to learn me. The first time someone told me I was a number, I was 19 years old and I believed him. His name was Pike, First Sergeant Pike. This was 2002, my first real unit after I finished training, an ordinary company in an ordinary building with a floor waxed so hard you could see the fluorescent lights in it. I was a private first class. I thought I had arrived somewhere. I thought putting on the uniform had made me one of them. First Sergeant Pike was signing paperwork at his desk when I reported in. He did not look up for a while. When he did, he looked at me the way you look at a delivery you did not order but have to sign for anyway. Ashcroft, he said, reading it off the form. Military police. Yes, First Sergeant. He set his pen down. He laced his fingers. He gave me a small, tired smile that had nothing kind in it. Don't get comfortable, Private Yamn, he said. Don't mistake yourself for chosen. They had numbers to hit. You were a number somebody needed to fill. That's all this is. You do the time, you do it quiet, and you don't take up more room than the slot you were poured into. I said, yes, First Sergeant, because that is what you say. And I walked out of his office, and I stood in the waxed hallway with the lights in the floor, and I made a decision. I want to be fair to Pike all these years later, because being fair to him is part of how I finally understood the whole thing. He was not a villain. He was a tired man, near the end of a long career, watching the Army change faster than he could change with it, and he had decided that the changes were a threat instead of a fact. He looked at a 19-year-old and he did not see a soldier. He saw a policy. He saw a target somebody in an office far away had told his army to hit, and he saw me as the proof that the standard must have dropped to let me in. He was wrong about the standard, but he was not lying about what he saw. That is the thing about being told you are a number. The person telling you usually believes it. That is what makes it stick. I decided I would make myself impossible to reduce to a number. I did not say it out loud. I did not write it down. I just started working like it was true. I was the first one in and the last one out. I learned every task in the section, and then I learned the tasks nobody wanted. I made corporal, then sergeant, faster than the people who had never doubted they belonged. By 22, I was a squad leader. By 24, I had a commission, a gold bar, and a platoon because someone along the way had looked at the work instead of the slot and decided the work was worth betting on. It was not clean and it was not free. I made mistakes. I got a squad turned around on a training lane once and lost us half a day, and I lay awake over it for a week. I learned to take a correction without letting it become the thing Pike had made his correction into, a verdict on whether I belonged. That is a hard skill, and most people never learn it. You have to be able to hear you did this wrong without hearing you are wrong. When you have started your career being told you are only a number, the two run together. Every mistake sounds like proof. I had to teach myself, slowly, painfully, that a mistake was just a mistake. That belonging was not a thing you had to re-earn every single day at the risk of losing it. I'm not sure I ever fully believed it, but I learned to act as if I did, which is most of the way there. There was a platoon sergeant, early on, a quiet man who never once told me I did not belong. He just handed me harder things and expected me to do them, which is a different way of saying the same thing in the opposite direction. He never gave a speech about it. He gave me responsibility, and he watched me carry it, and he nodded. Once when I got it right. And that nod did more for me than any speech Pike could have unmade. I have tried to be that platoon sergeant for other people ever since. I am better at it some days than others. It took me the better part of a life to answer First Sergeant Pike. Some sentences you carry so long, they stop sounding like insults and start sounding like instructions. Make yourself impossible to subtract. I built a whole career on a single cruel line from a tired man who probably forgot he said it before I made it to my truck. So when a 22-year-old corporal at my own gate said the same thing in newer words, I did not feel the sting where you would expect it. I felt it somewhere older. I felt 19 for a second, standing in a waxed hallway. And then I felt 43 again, and I watched the color leave his face, and I waited. The corporal tapped the screen a third time, as if the flag on it were a bug he could brush off. I knew what he was seeing, more or less. A walk-up red is supposed to return a name, a status, a green light, or a red one. What he was getting was more than that. My card is tied to my billet and my access, and my billet, as of tomorrow morning, was the one that owned him. The screen was showing him a line he had never seen come back on a woman in running shorts, an access level that did not fit the picture in his head. He decided it was an error. That is the thing about the picture in your head. When the world does not match it, you assume the world is broken before you assume the picture is. That's a glitch, he said. He was not talking to the private now. He was talking to me, and his voice had changed, sharpened the way a voice does when a person feels the floor tilt and grabs for control. "Ma'am, step aside. You're holding up the line." I did not step aside. Behind me, a car horn tapped. Once. Polite. The line had gotten long. Somewhere in it, a diesel idled rough. The private beside him, the one who had gone careful, leaned in and looked at the screen. I watched her read it. I watched her get to the line the corporal had skipped past, the one he thought was a glitch. Her eyes came up to me and stayed there. She did not say anything. She was 20 years old, if that, and she had just understood something her corporal had not, and she had the sense to keep her mouth shut and let it land where it needed to. The door of the guard shack opened, the one propped with the chair, and a sergeant first class came out. He was a big man, mid-30s, with the kind of steadiness that a good guard force is built on. "Sergeant of the guard, watch NCO," the man who runs the gate when nobody's watching, which is the only time a gate is truly run at all. His name tape said Devlin. He came out because his lane had gone quiet, and a quiet lane at a busy gate is a problem, the way a quiet child in a house is a problem. It means something is happening. He came up behind the corporal and looked over his shoulder at the screen. I watched Sergeant First Class Devlin read the same line the private had read. I watched his whole bearing change. Not dramatically. He did not gasp. He did not straighten up like a recruit. It was subtler than that, and it was total. A man who had been holding a gate became a man holding still. He did not announce anything. That is what told me he was good at his job. A lesser NCO would have barked something, made a show, tried to fix the moment by making it louder. Devlin did the opposite. He put his hand on the corporal's shoulder quietly, a signal to stop talking, and he keyed the radio on his vest and turned his head a few degrees away and spoke low. "Desk, this is the sergeant of the guard," he said. "Confirm the inbound provost's photo for me. Give me 2 words when you have it, yes or no." The radio hissed. The line of cars idled. The corporal looked at Devlin and then at me, and the last of the color went out of his face. The radio crackled. 2 words came back. I did not hear them clearly from where I stood, but I did not need to. I saw them land on Corporal Brandt's face. Whatever the desk said, it was a yes, and it was a name, and Corporal Brandt stopped talking entirely. 2 words. That is all it takes, sometimes, to turn a whole evening over. I have built most of my career on the idea that you do not need many words if the ones you have are true. Pike had done it to me with 1 sentence. The desk had just done it to Brandt with 2. Words are heavier than people think. A guard force runs on them. So does a life. The corporal's hand, the one holding my card, had started to shake, just slightly. He did not know what to do with the card now. Handing it back to me had become an enormous act, freighted with everything he had just understood. He held it out. His arm was not quite steady. I took it from him. I put it back in the little zip pocket of my shorts. I did not say anything yet. I wanted him to sit in the quiet for 1 more second, not to punish him, but because the quiet was doing more teaching than any words of mine could have. Here is the part nobody tells you about being finally seen. It does not feel like winning. It feels like a decision. Everything I had trained into myself for 24 years told me what to do next. Pull the card. Speak my rank. Let the fall happen. Let the corporal stand there in front of the private and the sergeant and the whole idling line and feel the floor open, the way he had tried to open it under me. It would have been easy. It would even have been fair, by most people's math. He had earned it. And there was a version of me, a 19-year-old version standing in a waxed hallway, who wanted it, who had been owed it for a very long time and knew it. But I was not 19. I was the person about to be responsible for this gate and every soul who worked it. And I understood something the corporal did not yet understand, and the private was watching to learn. What happened in the next 30 seconds was not about Corporal Brandt. It was about what a guard force learns when it watches power get exactly what it wants. It was about the private with the careful face who was going to spend the next 20 years deciding what kind of soldier to be, partly based on what she saw a lieutenant colonel do to a corporal on an ordinary Tuesday evening at a gate. Soldiers watch what leaders do far more than they listen to what leaders say. I have known that since I was the one watching. Every leader I ever had taught me something, and almost none of it came from their speeches. It came from the small moments when they thought the moment was small, how they treated the person who could not help them, what they did when they had all the power and no one would have blamed them for using it. Those are the moments a young soldier files away and builds a self around. I had been on the receiving end of good ones and bad ones, and I remembered every single one, which is how I knew this one mattered more than it looked like it did. Nyland was watching. That was the whole thing, right there. Not Brandt, Nyland, and the 8 or 10 other guards who would hear about this before their shift ended, and the ones they would tell until the story was the whole guard force's story, and it meant whatever I let it mean tonight. I had wanted to be seen. I had not wanted it to cost a 22-year-old more than it had cost me. Devlin was already moving toward the correction. I could see it building in him. The formal version. Corporal Brandt, stand at attention, the public dressing down. The thing that would become a story on the guard force by morning, the story of the night, the new provost caught a corporal running his mouth and buried him in front of God and the gate. I stepped out of the light before he could start. "Sergeant," I said. My voice was low, level. I had learned a long time ago that the truth does not need volume when it has weight. "Run your gate. You've got a line." Devlin stopped. He looked at me. "Corporal Brandt and I are going to have a conversation," I said. "Not a spectacle. Stand the lane back up. Keep the cars moving. That's the mission. The mission comes first, even tonight, especially tonight." For a second, Devlin did not move, because what I was asking him to do was to let it go. In public, in front of the gate, and every instinct in a good NCO screams against letting a thing like that go. "Yes, ma'am," he said. He turned. "Nyland," he said to the private, "take the terminal. Move the line." Private First Class Nyland stepped up to the reader. Her hands were steady. She started clearing cars, one after another, calm, competent. and I understood that whatever she had just decided about the kind of soldier to be, part of it had already taken. I looked at Corporal Brandt. He was standing very still, the way you stand when you have realized the size of a mistake, and there is nowhere to put your hands. "Corporal," I said, "walk with me." We went into the guard shack. Small room, one window on the lane, a counter, a coffee maker with a burned pot, a corkboard on the wall. Devlin followed and stood in the doorway, which was correct. You do not leave a young soldier alone in a room with a senior officer, not even now, not even for this. Especially for this. I did not sit. Neither did Brandt. He stood at a stiff, miserable version of parade rest, staring at a point on the wall over my shoulder. "You know who I am now," I said. "Yes, ma'am." His voice cracked on it. He cleared his throat. "Ma'am, I'm sorry. I didn't know it was you." "I know you didn't. If I'd known you were the incoming provost, I never would have—" "Stop," I said. Not sharp, just a period on the end of a sentence he did not want to finish. "Listen to what you just said. You're telling me that if you had known my rank, you would have treated me differently." He said nothing. He had heard it, in his own mouth, the shape of it. "That's not the apology you think it is, Corporal," I said. "You are not in trouble for not knowing my face. Nobody expects a gate guard to have the incoming provost's photo memorized off a walk-up in running shorts. If you had said, 'Ma'am, I need to verify you at the pass office,' I would have gone to the pass office, and I would have thought, that is a corporal doing his job. You would never have known who I was, and I would have driven off this gate proud of you." He risked a look at me. Just a flick of the eyes, and back to the wall. "You are accountable," I said, "for what you said to a stranger you had already decided did not belong. You looked at a woman you had never seen, in clothes that told you she was nobody, and you announced to a line of cars that she was a quota, a number, somebody they let in to hit a target. You did that to a person you thought had no power to do anything about it. That is the part that matters. That is the only part that matters. Because the woman in the running shorts is who you actually are as a guard, not the woman in the oak leaves." The room was very quiet. On the lane outside, I could hear Nyland's voice, even and clear, moving cars. "Good evening, ID please, have a good night," the gate running the way a gate should. "I have been the woman in the running shorts my whole career, Corporal," I said. "I know exactly what it feels like to be told you are a number. I decided a long time ago to make myself impossible to reduce to one. It worked. It also took 24 years and cost me things I'm not going to explain to you tonight, so I am not going to pretend I don't understand the sting on your side of it. Now that the screen has turned it around on you, I understand it better than you'd guess." I let that sit. "But understanding it is why I'm not going to destroy you for it," I said. "I'm going to make you carry it instead." He looked at me then, fully, for the first time. A young man trying to understand a mercy he did not know the shape of yet. "Ma'am," he said, "I'd rather you just, whatever the punishment is, I'd rather take it." "I know you would," I said. "It's easier. You take the punishment, you feel bad for a week, and then it's paid off, and you get to go back to being who you were. That's not what's going to happen here. What's going to happen is you're going to remember what your own face felt like a minute ago when the floor went out from under you, and you're going to carry that up to the lane with you every shift from now on. And the next time you look at somebody in running shorts, or a beat-up car, or clothes that tell you they don't matter, you're going to feel a little of what you feel right now. That's not a punishment, Corporal. That's the job. That's what the job costs to do it right." He swallowed. "Yes, ma'am." There was a photograph on the corkboard. I had been half aware of it the whole time, the way you are half aware of a person standing at the edge of a room. Now I looked at it directly. It was a memorial photo. A young military police soldier in a formal frame, a small folded flag pinned beside it, a plaque underneath with a name and 2 dates too close together. The Guard Force's own honored dead. Every good gate has one somewhere, a face they keep in the room so the room remembers what a gate is actually for. I did not know that particular soldier, but I knew the frame. I knew the shape of the thing, and it opened a door in me I usually keep shut. Because I had stood at an entry control point once where the question of who belonged was not an abstraction and not a matter of a walk-up read and a bruised ego. I had stood at a gate where the wrong answer to that question killed people I loved. It was 2009. I was a first lieutenant then, a platoon leader running an entry control point on a base a long way from any place with a lane light and a coffee maker. It was the middle of a hot afternoon. The lane was busy, local traffic, supply trucks, the ordinary churn of a gate in a war. That gate did not get comfortable. That gate could not afford to. We ran it the way you run a gate that has already been tested, because ours had twice in the months before, and both times it had held. And holding is a thing you pay for in a currency of constant attention that wears people down to the bone. My platoon was tired in the specific way of soldiers who cannot ever fully relax. You could see it in how they held their weapons. You could see it in how little they joked. I was 26 years old, and I was responsible for about 40 of them, and I took that the way I have taken everything. Too seriously and not seriously enough, both at once. I knew every one of their names and most of their kids' names. I knew who was getting divorced by mail and who had a baby coming they might not make it home for. I carried all of it. That is the job nobody puts in the manual. The gate is the easy part. The people are the weight. My soldier on the near lane that day was a specialist named Andre Salcedo, 24 years old. From a town I had never heard of before I met him and have never forgotten since. He had a gift I have only seen in a few people, which was that he could be friendly and suspicious at the same time. He could wave a family through with a smile and watch their hands the whole time. He read a gate the way I read a gate. I used to think he taught me half of what I know about a checkpoint, and he was 2 years younger than me. He should have made sergeant sooner than he did. The paperwork moved slow for him too, for different reasons than it had moved slow for me, or maybe the same reasons wearing a different face. He never complained about it. He used to say the job was the job whether or not the rank caught up to it, and he was right, and I have thought about that sentence 1,000 times since. He had a way with the young soldiers, the nervous ones, the new ones, the ones who flinched at the gate because they had heard the stories. He would stand next to them on the lane and talk them down, quiet, steady, teaching them to see instead of just to fear. Watch the hands, he would say. Watch the eyes. The car tells you before the man does. He was building guards who would outlive him, and he did not know it, and it would not have changed anything if he had. That was just who he was. The morning of that afternoon, he had shown me a picture on his phone. His sister's quinceañera back home, everyone dressed up. His mother in the middle of it laughing. He was proud of them. He was going to go home to that. That is the picture I have of him that I keep. Not the other one. The one with his mother laughing. A vehicle came up his lane that afternoon that was not right. He knew it before any of us. I have gone over it 10,000 times. The way it sat low on its springs. The way the driver's eyes were wrong. Andre put his hand up. He was already keying his radio. He was already stepping to put his body between that vehicle and the people behind him in the lane, which is the whole job. That is the entire job in one motion. You put yourself between the threat and the people who trusted the gate to keep them safe. He decided, in about 2 seconds, that the man in that vehicle did not belong. He was right. I do not describe what happened next, because I made a decision years ago about what I would and would not say out loud. But I will tell you that I spent the rest of that afternoon on the wire, and that some of the people at my gate went home, and some did not, and that specialist Andre Salcedo was one of the ones who did not, and that he saved more lives than I can count by answering correctly. In 2 seconds, the exact question a 22-year-old corporal had answered so carelessly an hour ago about a woman in running shorts. They gave me a medal for that afternoon, a bronze star with a small bronze V on it, for valor, which is a strange word to attach to the worst day of your life. I keep it in a drawer. I do not look at it much. The citation is written in that flat official language that turns a nightmare into a paragraph. It says I disregarded my own safety. It says I maintained the integrity of the checkpoint under direct attack. It says I organized the treatment and evacuation of the wounded. Every word is true, and not one of them is what happened. What happened was that I did the next thing, and then the next thing, and then the thing after that, for a long time. Because if I stopped and let myself understand the whole of it, I would not have been able to move, and there were people who needed me to move. That is what valor is, most of the time. It is not being brave. It is being too busy to be anything else, and sorting out later what it cost. I sorted out later what it cost. I am still sorting. Andre's family got a folded flag. His mother, in the picture on his phone, the one where she was laughing, she was not laughing when they gave her the flag. I was there. I will not describe her face. Some things you carry are not yours to hand to anyone else, and her face at that moment is one of them. I hold it. It is part of the price of the medal in the drawer, and it is a fair price, and I have never once thought I got the better end of that exchange. Andre Salcedo died deciding who belonged at a gate, I said to Corporal Brandt, and I was surprised to hear my own voice, because I had not planned to say any of it. I have never once thought that question was small, not for one day in 17 years. So when I hear a guard treat it like a joke, like a place to be bored and cruel, it does not make me angry, Corporal. It scares me, because I know what it costs when a gate stops taking that question seriously. Brandt was not staring at the wall anymore. He was looking at the photograph on the corkboard, His eyes were wet, and he was fighting it, the way a young man fights it badly. "Yes, ma'am," he said. It was barely a sound. Devlin spoke from the doorway. "Ma'am," he said, "that one's on me, too." I turned. He had his cap in his hands, a sergeant first class, a good one, standing in a doorway with his cap in his hands, and I understood what it cost him to say what he was about to say. "The quota talk," he said. The whole tone of it. That's been in the air on my guard mount for a while now. The guys make cracks about who's here for real and who's here to check a box. I heard it. More than once. And I called it a joke and let it ride, because they're young and it's a long shift, and I told myself it didn't mean anything. He shook his head slowly. It means something. I watched it come out of Brant's mouth at a woman who turned out to be my provost, and I finally heard how it sounds from the outside. It sounds like a gate that's decided some people don't count. That's on me. I set the tone, and I let that be the tone. Accountability climbs. It does not just fall on the youngest and the dumbest. A good organization is one where the sergeant first class in the doorway takes the weight instead of letting it all land on the corporal at the terminal. I had walked onto this gate expecting to find out what kind of guard force I was inheriting. In about 15 minutes, I had found out. The corporal had shown me the problem. The sergeant had shown me the reason to hope. "Thank you, Sergeant," I said. "You're right. And I'll hold you to fixing the tone because you're the one who can. A provost can write policy. Only the sergeant of the guard can change what the guard force actually says to each other at 2 a.m. when the officers are asleep." "Yes, ma'am." "The people who choose wrong at a gate," I said, and I was talking to both of them now. "Do not always get a second morning. Some gates don't forgive a bad 2 seconds. This one tonight was cheap. It cost a woman her feelings, and it cost a corporal a scare. That's the cheapest this lesson ever comes. I would rather you learn it here, from me, for the price of an uncomfortable evening, than learn it the way I learned it." I looked at Brant. "You're going to get a second morning, Corporal," I said. "It's more than everybody gets. Don't waste it." I walked back to lodging in full dark. The sprinklers had shut off. The parade field was black and wet and quiet. The trainees had gone in. It was just me and the sound of my own running shoes on the path and the small hum of the bass at rest, and the thing I always feel after a moment like that one, which is not triumph. It is a kind of tiredness that has nothing to do with sleep. The night was cool now. The heat had finally broken, and there was a small wind moving in the pines, and I could hear, far off, the barrier arm at the gate coming down and going up, coming down and going up, the ordinary metronome of a checkpoint at night. Nyland was still running that lane, I knew. Clean and calm, moving the cars. I had spent 24 years proving First Sergeant Pike wrong. I want to be honest about that, because it is the truest thing I know about myself, and it is not entirely a flattering thing. A great deal of what I have built, I built to answer one cruel sentence from a tired man in a waxed hallway. Make yourself impossible to subtract. It is a good engine. It got me here. It also runs on something that never quite gets full. There is a cost to living your life as an answer to someone else's insult. You give them a kind of ownership. Every promotion, every award, every hard thing done well, and some part of you turns to a man 20 years gone and says, "See, see," and he is not there to see, and he would not care if he were, and the wanting him to see never stops no matter how high you climb. It is a hunger that eats the meal and stays hungry. I had won every argument I ever had with Pike, and I had never once felt like I had won, because the argument was never really with Pike. It was with the version of me that half believed him. Standing in that guard shack, with the photograph on the wall, I had understood something I had managed not to understand for a very long time. I had not only been proving it to Pike, I had been proving it to Andre, to the specialist who never once doubted I belonged, who treated me from the first day like an officer worth following, not because of my rank, but because of how I read a gate, which was the only currency that mattered to him. Andre Salcedo would have laughed at the idea that I needed to prove anything to anybody. He would have found it exhausting. And I had spent the 17 years since he died doing exactly that, chasing a recognition that the one person whose opinion I most wanted was never in any doubt about. You cannot make yourself whole by making yourself unreducible. Those are two different projects. One of them I finished a long time ago. The other one I am still working on. I suspect I will be working on it for the rest of my life. I stopped at the memorial the base keeps near the headquarters building on my way back. I had not planned to. My feet just took me there. A low wall of names, a flagpole, a bench. I did not know any of the names on that particular wall. It did not matter. A wall of names is a wall of names, and I have stood at enough of them to know that they are all, in the end, the same wall. Young people who answered a hard question correctly and paid for it. I stood there a while in the dark. I did not say anything out loud. I am not a person who talks to walls. But I stood there, which is its own kind of saying, and then I walked on. When I got back to the room, I picked up the 2 oak leaves off the dresser. I turned them over in my hand in the dark. Small things, subdued, dull, no shine to them at all. They had cost more than they looked like they were worth, which is true of almost everything worth having. I thought about the young woman I had been in the waxed hallway, the one who heard she was a number and decided to become undeniable. I wished I could tell her a few things, that she was right to fight and wrong about what she was fighting for, that the recognition she was chasing would come and would be real and would not fill the hole she thought it would fill, that the hole was a different shape than she imagined and got filled, when it got filled at all, by other things, by a specialist showing you a photo of his mother laughing, by a private on a lane who reminds you why the work matters, by holding a door for a scared kid who got it wrong. I could not tell her any of that. She had to walk the whole road to learn it, the way we all do. But I was proud of her. That was new. For a long time, I had only been driven by her. Standing there with the oak leaves in my hand, I found I was proud of her too, and I let that be enough. In the morning, I would put them on. In the morning, I would stop being nobody at that gate. For good. Being right had cost me plenty. I knew the exact bill by heart. Being whole was a different bill, in a different currency, and I was still paying it, a little every day, and I was starting to think that was all right. That maybe the paying was the point. I set the oak leaves down where I could reach them, and I lay down, and I did not sleep much, which is normal for me the night before I take responsibility for something. Sure. The change of responsibility was at 0900 hours. It is a small ceremony, as these things go. Not the change of command with all its flags and its long tradition. This was the passing of a specific weight from one officer to another, out on a concrete pad behind the Provost Marshal's building, with the guard force and the patrol sections and the investigators standing in formation in the morning sun. I stood in my service uniform, with the 2 oak leaves on my shoulders, and I watched the outgoing provost fold up his tenure and hand it to me in a few quiet, formal words. Colonel Voss, the garrison commander, said his piece. It was a good speech. Short, which is the highest praise I have for a speech. And then it was mine. I looked out at the formation. Somewhere in the middle of it, in the ranks of the guard force, was a corporal named Brandt, standing at attention in the sun. And I did not look for him, and I did not find him, and that was on purpose. I did not name him from the stage. I did not tell the story of the gate. A leader who humiliates a soldier from a podium the morning after sparing him in a guard shack has not spared him at all. She has just delayed the blade and made it public. Colonel Voss had said, in his short, good speech, that the Provost Marshal is the conscience of an installation. I had heard that line before, at other ceremonies, and always thought it was the kind of thing colonels say. Standing there with it aimed at me, I found I believed it. The conscience of a place, not its fist, its conscience. The part of it that decides over and over who counts. I said what I actually believed, which is the only kind of speech worth giving. I told them that a gate is a promise, that every person who drives through it is trusting the men and women who work it to have answered a hard question correctly, over and over, all day and all night, forever. Who belongs and who does not. I told them that the question deserves to be taken seriously every single time, and that the day we start treating some people as if they obviously do not count is the day we start getting the question wrong in the other direction too. I told them I had learned that at a gate, a long way from here, at a cost I would not describe, and that I would spend my time here making sure they never had to learn it the way I did. I did not say the word quota. I did not have to. There was a corporal in that formation who heard every word of it aimed straight at him, and there was a sergeant first class beside him who heard it too. And that was enough. That was all it needed to be. Afterward, Command Sergeant Major Okafor found me by the building. She was a formidable woman, the kind of E9 who has forgotten more about running an installation than most officers will ever learn, and she had the flat, evaluating look of someone deciding what she thought of me. I had heard, secondhand, that she had reserved judgment on the incoming provost. That was fair. I would have reserved judgment on me, too. "Ma'am," she said, "the guard force is yours." "Sergeant Major, they're already talking about last night." She let that hang there for a second, watching me. "The gate, Corporal Brandt. Word travels on a guard force faster than it travels anywhere on this earth. By the time I had my coffee this morning, 3 different people had told me 3 different versions of it. I'd imagine the versions were colorful. They were. A small, dry, almost smile touched the corner of her mouth. In every one of them, the new provost caught a corporal running his mouth. In 2 of them, she buried him where he stood. In the 3rd one, she took him in the shack, and everybody figured that meant something worse. The almost smile went away. The 3rd one was closest to the truth, wasn't it? Except nothing worse happened in that shack at all. He got a conversation, I said, and he kept his job. Okafor nodded slowly. She looked out at the formation breaking up, the soldiers filtering back toward their sections in the morning light. You could have made an example of him, she said. New provost first night catches a guard being ugly. That's a free win. Nobody would have blinked. Half of them would have respected you more for it. Half of them would have, I agreed. The wrong half. And the corporal would have learned that the only thing that matters at a gate is whether the person in front of you can hurt you, which is the exact thing that was wrong with him in the first place. She looked at me for a long moment. Whatever she had been reserving, she stopped reserving it. I saw it happen. It is a specific thing when a command sergeant major decides you are worth following, and it does not happen twice, so you notice it the once. Yes, ma'am, she said. It is. She started to go, then stopped. For what it's worth, she said. When I came up, there was plenty of folks let me know they figured I got where I got for reasons that had nothing to do with me being good at the job. I made a decision about it a long time ago. She looked out at the emptying pad. I decided the best answer to that was to be so good at the job that the only way to keep believing it was to be a fool. Made a lot of fools out of a lot of people over the years. A pause. Sounds like you made the same decision. I did, Sergeant Major. Then we'll get along fine, she said, and this time she did go, and I stood there a second longer than I needed to, because it is not nothing to be recognized by someone who walked the same hard mile. There was one more thing to do that day, and it was the thing that mattered most, though nobody but me would ever know it happened. In my new office, in a stack of files the outgoing provost had left for me, there were the ordinary things, personnel actions, policy letters, a budget that did not add up, because they never do, and there was a thick, worn folder that had nothing to do with this installation at all, because I had carried it with me from every assignment for years and set it on every new desk and failed, at every single one, to move it another inch forward. It was Andre Saltado's Valor Packet, the recommendation for a higher award for what he did at that gate in 2009. The paperwork that would take his Bronze Star with Valor and, if the right people finally signed the right lines, raise it to what a lot of us who were there that day believed it should have been. It had stalled somewhere in the system years ago, the way these things stall on a missing signature, a lost endorsement, a witness statement that never got transcribed, a war that moved on and took the urgency with it. I had picked it up when the officer before me gave up on it. I had carried it since. I had not managed to finish it either. I read it again that morning. My own witness statement was in there, 17 years old, in the flat, careful language you use when you are writing about the worst day of your life for a board of strangers. I picked up a pen and I wrote a new endorsement. Provost Marshal is not nothing on a piece of paper like that. It carries weight now that Lieutenant did not carry then. I wrote what I had watched a specialist do in 2 seconds at a gate, and I signed it, and I flagged it for my administrative NCO to push to the next level with my personal endorsement attached, and I wrote a note that said, in effect, this does not sit on this desk. This moves. It was the smallest thing, a signature, a flag on a file, 17 years too late. And probably it would stall again, because the system is the system. But I had spent a career learning that you do not get to control whether the door opens. You only get to control whether you are still knocking. So I knocked. For Andre, who never once doubted I belonged, I knocked. I called his mother that evening. I had her number in the file. I had called her before, over the years, on the anniversary, on his birthday, the way some of us do for the families of the ones we lost. A small keeping in touch that costs an hour and means more than an hour ever should. She remembered me. She always did. I told her the packet was moving again. I told her I could not promise what would come of it because I could not, but that it was on my desk now and it was going to leave my desk pointed uphill and that I would not let it stall again while I had a say. She was quiet for a moment. Then she said the thing she always said, which was thank you for still saying his name. And I said the thing I always said, which was that I would say his name as long as I had a mouth to say it with. Because a man who dies deciding who belongs at a gate has earned that much from the people he let through. We did not talk long. We never do. But I hung up feeling like I had done one true thing that day, which is a good day, by the standard I keep. Sergeant First Class Devlin came to see me at the end of the day, at my request. He stood in front of my desk, cap in hand again, though this time it was just courtesy and not penance. "Sergeant," I said, "Corporal Brandt, what's your read on him?" "Honestly, ma'am?" He considered it. Devlin was not a man who gave you the easy answer. He's a good guard on the technical side, knows his procedures, fast on the terminal. The mouth is the problem. Was the problem. He paused. He came to me this morning before formation, on his own. Asked me what he should do. Not to get out of anything, he didn't know how to carry it, what he'd said and who he'd said it to. "What did you tell him?" "I told him to carry it," Devlin said. "Told him some things you don't get to put down. You just get better at carrying them." I thought that was about the wisest thing I had heard all day. "Here's what I want," I said. "I want him kept on the gate, not moved, not hidden in a section somewhere. On my gate, on the lane, doing the job." Devlin's eyebrows moved just slightly. "I could pull him off," I said. "Send him somewhere he never has to look at that terminal again, never has to remember. A lot of commanders would. It feels like mercy. It isn't. It's just tidy. If I move him, the lesson goes with him, and the guard force learns that the way you handle a mistake is to make it disappear. I don't want the guard who hides, Sergeant. I want the guard who learns. Keep him on my gate. Let him stand at that lane every day and be the person who takes the question seriously now, because he knows exactly what it costs to take it lightly. That's worth more to me than 100 guards who never got it wrong because they never cared enough to get it wrong at all." Devlin looked at me for a second, and then something in his face settled, and I understood that whatever the guard force had been wondering about their new provost, he had just gotten his answer, and it was one he could work with. "Yes, ma'am," he said. "I'll keep him on the gate." "And Sergeant, that private, Nyland." "Ma'am." She read that screen before he did. She kept her mouth shut and let it land right. Then she stepped up and ran the lane clean while everything came apart around her. I said, "Watch her. She's got the thing you can't teach. Don't let the guard force grind it out of her." "I've noticed her too, ma'am," Devlin said. "I'll watch her." He turned to go, then stopped at the door, the way people do when the real thing they came to say has been waiting behind the official things. "Ma'am, can I ask you something?" "Go ahead. Last night, when you stopped me from correcting him in front of the lane." He turned the cap over in his hands. "I've been doing this a long time. My whole instinct said you don't let that go. You don't ever let a guard talk to somebody like that and just walk it into a shack. It felt wrong to me, letting it look like nothing happened." He met my eyes. "But it's been eating at the guard force all day, in a way a public reaming never would have. They can't stop talking about it, about how you had every right and you didn't use it. I've watched 3 guards be careful with people at that lane today who wouldn't have been careful yesterday. I don't fully understand how that works, but it worked better than what I'd have done." "It works," I said, "because a public punishment closes the story. Everybody watches the guy get what's coming, and then it's over. And the lesson is that the danger is getting caught. A quiet correction doesn't close. It stays open. Nobody quite knows what happened in that shack, so everybody has to imagine it, and imagining it is worse and better than knowing. It makes them think. Getting caught you can protect against. Having to think you can't." I shrugged. "Also, I meant it. I didn't want to hurt him. Those 2 things happen to line up. They don't always. When they do, you take it." Devlin nodded slowly. "Yes, ma'am," he said. And this time he did leave. And I thought, not for the first time, that the whole art of this job is finding the places where the merciful thing and the effective thing are the same thing, and having the patience to wait for them. I sat in the office, that was mine now, in the last of the daylight coming through the window, and I let the day be over. I gave the corporal the second morning nobody had promised me, and I meant it. I have thought about that a lot since, about why I did it, about whether First Sergeant Pike deserved a second morning too all those years ago, and whether anyone gave him one, and whether the tiredness in him that made him cruel to a 19-year-old was itself a bill somebody had handed him that he was still paying. I do not know. I never saw Pike again. I hope he found some peace. I am not sure I mean that as generously as it sounds, but I am working on it. Here is what I know. If someone has decided you are only a number, you do not have to shout them down. You do not have to make them see you. Shouting rarely changes the picture in a person's head, and the recognition you win by force never quite feeds the thing you were actually hungry for. I chased that recognition for 24 years, and I caught it, finally, on a concrete pad at 0900 hours with 2 oak leaves on my shoulders. And I can tell you it is real, and it is worth having, and it is also not the thing that makes you whole. What you can do, what is actually in your power, is this. You can make yourself impossible to subtract, not to prove them wrong, not for them at all, for the work and for the people beside you who never doubted you, and for the ones coming up behind you who are about to be told the same cruel thing you were told. There is a difference between those two reasons, and it took me most of my life to feel it. Doing the work to prove a pike wrong keeps him in the room forever. He becomes the judge you can never get out from under, even after he is gone, even after you have long since won. Doing the work for its own sake, for the people it protects and the ones it lifts, sets you free of him. Same work, same early mornings and late nights and hard things done well. Completely different weight. One of them is a debt that never clears. The other is a gift you get to give. I did the first one for 24 years, and I am trying, now, late, to learn the second. It is slow. Old engines are hard to replace, but it can be done, and the doing of it is the difference between being right and being whole, which are not the same thing and were never the same thing, whatever the young woman in the waxed hallway believed. And then, when the door finally opens, when you are the one standing inside with your hand on it, you get to make a choice that the person who called you a number never imagined you would have to make. You get to decide who feels welcome at the gate. I decided. I hold it open now, on purpose, especially for the ones somebody has already looked at and quietly written off. The woman in the running shorts, the number somebody needed to fill, the kid at the terminal who got it wrong and is scared and is trying to learn how to carry it. The gate is mine now. So is the choice of who belongs at it. And I do not intend to get that question wrong. Not in either direction, not for one day. Andre would have liked that, I think. He always did read a gate better than anyone. The end.